Thank you for joining me, Robert Gunn, principal
Yes,
of
ma'am.
Du Bois Academy. It's really wonderful to see you today. How are you doing?
It is a great day to be alive. And to my Spanish speaking brothers and sisters, es un gran día para estar vivo. I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
You know what? I'm well. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
It's an interesting time to be alive. I think we can all agree with that. When I started this conversation series, Robert, what I was wondering about is how was what's happening in the world impacting how we see or measure what's essential? So I'd just like to begin there today. A lot of us have that strong core that is pretty unflinching in times of chaos, what we believe is most important, but there's a lot happening. And how is it affecting your thinking or not?
Yes. Yeah, so that's a great question. I think I've had quite some time to process and to think about that question. I know for a fact, had you asked me that same question back in March 15th, when we got the word that we were going to be leaving early before spring break with the hopes of coming back after spring break to continue to do the service and the work that we do at the Du Bois Academy with our young men. Over the course of time, a lot has happened. Things continue to evolve with COVID-19. We look at social issues, systemic injustice, inequities, the things that, are part of the ethos of the Du Bois Academy that we fight each and every day. And I just think where I am today, the things that I consider to be essential haven't changed. But I think there's more of a sense of urgency, which I didn't know was possible within myself.
I'm struck by the fact that you say you didn't know it could be more urgent within you. Tell me about, you know, how the times are affecting you and fanning those flames of urgency.
Yes, ma'am. So I've been told this is the start of my 19th year in education. So whether I was a teacher, an assistant principal, football coach, now principal, I've always been told, slow down, you're going to burn out. And I just feel like the passion and the energy and the enthusiasm and the fervor that I have for the service that I look to deliver every single day. I didn't think that it could be any more heightened. And I think the sense of urgency that I've always had. I don't, of course, think that I'm invincible or that I'll be around forever. But I've always looked at every single day and every single moment, thinking in the back of my mind that there's always tomorrow. So anything that I don't get finished today, I can finish tomorrow. But as I've seen time and time again, and as we've seen time and time again, tomorrow certainly isn't promised to me or to anyone else. So I want to get as much work and service that I can get done and accomplished. I want to do it, I want to do it now. And just one of the quotes that I shared with our staff for our opening staff meeting, believe it or not, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois in 1903. He said this in 1903, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't expect to get the quote exactly right, but it's, now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, not some future day, not some future year. We need to get things done now. And just that quote from Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, the namesake of our school, has just been etched in my mind for the last several days.
117 years later, Dr. Du Bois' quote seems to me to be more relevant than ever. How are you processing the collision of events as an instructor, as a leader, as a member of our society, as a human trying to process, as a Black man living in the world of COVID-19, the newest pandemic? How is all this finding its way into your brain as you're shepherding these young lions?
Yes, ma'am. I would say as fiercely and as delicately as I can.
Mm.
It's hard and it's heavy. So, while I want to, come out swinging and fighting, I also know that that's not what I would ask our young men to do. So when I talk about being delicate in these matters, it's just making sure, again, that I'm thinking things through, that I'm making sure that I'm a good listener. And I think that's one of the things that's sorely lacking right now in our community. I think if people could just take the time to listen and to want to understand, not want to be right, to want to hear what's being said, not wanting to respond to what's being said. I think it would open a lot of doors and open a lot of conversation. So to say that I have it all together or I have the answers, it's completely false. But I know that I'm committed to the work and the service that I'm doing as principal at the W.E.B. Du Bois Academy. I know that I was put on the earth to do and to lead this work.
You mentioned listening, and listen to hear, listen to understand, rather than listening to respond. How do you teach young men the skill of listening? And I think the patience that is part of the listening process.
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. And for us, it all goes back to how we want to teach. And, the African proverb that's proudly displayed in our school building: until lions have historians, hunters will never cease to be heroes. So in order to understand that proverb, you also have to be able to understand what perspective means. True, everyone has a right to their own opinion, right, wrong, or indifferent, but everyone also has the right to be heard, even if you don't agree with their opinion. So you think of historical events like, take the Boston Tea Party, for example. You look at what those heroic figures in American history did in terms of essentially looting a boat, rioting, right, throwing things that didn't belong to them, stealing. They're seen as heroes, whereas you see certain individuals right now in our society who might have a different skin color, doing the exact same things in a different city for different reasons, but they're seen as riotous thugs, right? So when it comes down to how do we want to teach our young men to be better listeners, is to step outside of themselves in any given moment and understand, whether you agree or disagree with whoever it is that's speaking to you, at least try to understand their message.
For anybody who watches this and is unfamiliar with the nature of the curriculum of the W.E.B. Du Bois Academy, there's an extraordinary effort that's been placed on a broader exposure to history that puts you all far ahead in the work that much of the rest of our society is just beginning. Would you tell me a little bit about that, the curriculum that's in place for your young men?
Sure. So before I tell you about the curriculum, it makes sense to just start with our school's mission. And it's very simple. And it is to engage, to eliminate barriers, and to empower each young man that we serve to achieve excellence. It's that simple. We believe that excellence lies within each and every one of our students. And it's our job as a school and our jobs as educators to make sure we unlock their brilliance and unlock their greatness. In terms of our curriculum work, we don't think that students are going to be able to internalize that they were meant to be great if everything that has ever been taught to them is coming from a deficit lens. The first time that, you're experiencing African-American people or African people in history, historically, it's slavery. So what does that do to the mindset of a student where you haven't taken them back to where they came from, even before slavery, so they could see and so they could know all the excellence that existed in Africa, whether they were, whether it was kingdoms, whether mathematicians, whether it was scientists. So that's just like going back to that piece of things. And then just starting to really teach our students to understand that there have been some systems and some structures that historically have been in place. So, one of the examples I give students all the time is, you have Robert Gunn Jr. and his great-great-grandfather fought in World War II, right? And then you have one of my best friends, let's say, or one of my esteemed colleagues at the Du Bois Academy, Mrs. Amy Wells. Her great-great-grandfather also fought in World War II. We would be remiss not to point out the differences of what both of those soldiers who proudly served their countries came back to, and what opportunities Mrs. Wells's great-grandfather would have had versus the opportunities that my great-grandfather had, fighting in the exact same war for the same cause, for the red, white, and blue that we all are supposed to, just be all for. So once we start to talk to our students about, some of those things, we want them to learn how to question. We want them to learn how to question the source. Now, there are some folks who would say, Thomas Jefferson, helped pen the Declaration of Independence. But like my daughter asked me recently, well, wow, Dad, how did he write those words, but he had slaves? So I just had that conversation with her. Does that mean that Thomas Jefferson was a bad American? that's not for me to tell our students. That's not for me to tell my daughters, but I want to make sure that they know, yes, he did help write the Declaration of Independence, but there's also some other things about him when it comes to, you know, his history that also should be shared when it comes to teaching history. So students get a complete picture of what truly happened in our society.
Our white founding fathers have always been asset framed.
Without question. And again, until lions have historians, hunters will never cease to be heroes. And I'm not casting any aspersions about anyone. But the simple fact is, until we tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth about everyone who came before us, what's happening now, and if we don't change it, what will continue to occur after us, then we're not doing any good for anyone in our society. And for far too long, that's been the case. And we aim to straight up obliterate that narrative of what it means to be a young, successful African-American male, male of color, or for that matter, any male, because all the students at the Du Bois Academy are not males of color. We have some white brothers in the school building too. And the beautiful thing about them, they will stand up and they will fight right alongside their brothers now, and they'll do the same thing as they continue to get older.
And how amazing to grow up in the space of the Du Bois Academy at those pivotal ages, you know, those early years of, you know, middle school, high school. I guess you're adding a year every year. Is that still the case?
Yes, ma'am.
And to have that as part of your context as you're forming, you know, continuing to form identity and values. What a remarkable thing those young men are getting to experience. You know, the sense of empowerment and the sense of compassion and understanding and desire to be allies as humans, you know.
Yes, ma'am. And it's not just them. It's not just them that's blessed to be along the journey. I think all of our staff members at Du Bois would tell you we're incredibly blessed. We're going to be able to literally see them through to the end of, or I'm sorry, to the end of their K through 12 education and to the beginning of the rest of their lives. So we are very, very, very excited to be on this journey with them.
What is the highest gift that you believe a young lion can receive during their time at the Du Bois Academy?
Perspective, being able to understand that there's more ways, there's always more sides to things, and just being, I guess, swift enough to be able to differentiate sources and what's being told to you, and do you trust it or do you not? Do you question it or do you not? And I'm always going to ask them to lean on the side of questioning. So perspective would be a huge piece. The other gifts I would say are our pride values and their perseverance, resilience, initiative, discipline, and empathy. And I firmly believe if we can teach our young men those dispositions, so we're very intentional of making sure that students not only have to persevere in their day-to-day lives, but we want them to have to persevere through their academic challenges. We want our young men to be comfortable in their skin, and we want them to just understand it's okay to be you. You know, you don't have to be the next LeBron. You don't have to be the next Robert Gunn. Be the first you and be the best version of you because you were meant to be great.
Well, it sounds like you're teaching them how to think and how to reject a narrative cast upon them about themselves, but to really live into and embrace their individuality and their power and their possibility.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And the only thing you can't be is just a bad person, right? You just can't treat people bad. Outside of that, you know, be yourself. Be yourself. And if you are the type that, you know, wants to treat people bad, you've landed in the right spot at the Du Bois Academy because our counseling staff, our mental health counseling staff, you know, they're phenomenal. And that's another thing, you know, that we want to wrap our heads around with our young men at the Du Bois Academy, this stigma that, you know, if you need help mentally, you're weak. I tell our students all the time, hey, I've seen a therapist. It's no problem at all. You know, being a principal and feeling at times the weight of the world on on my shoulders. And I know it's not the entire world, but I care so much about these guys and their well-being. Sometimes that can be heavy. And there are times where I feel like I failed. There are times where I feel down, and I understand that I need to bounce back up. And I don't always have the tools to kind of navigate those things myself. So I'm comfortable enough with you. I'm comfortable enough with anybody that watches this to say, yes, Robert Earl Gunn Jr., I have definitely been to therapy. It's nothing that I am embarrassed of. It's something that I actually appreciate, because I now know how to better cope with things. And when I tell students that, it's just amazing that it's almost like a weight is lifted, like, Mr. Gunn, you've been to therapy? Absolutely. And you're not like embarrassed about it. I'm not. I'm more embarrassed to be in a situation where I need help and I don't ask for it. So for the rest of your lives, you have me. For the rest of your lives, you have our staff members. And if you need anything, I would much rather you ask for help than to later ask for forgiveness because you didn't get the help.
Well, Teresa Carpenter Beams has definitely gone to therapy as well. And I think, the fact that so many of our young people are struggling with a lot of challenges right now that create feelings of depression and anxiety, to destigmatize seeking and receiving that help is one of the most important things we can be doing right now.
Yes, ma'am. And especially, like you said, right now, just think about it. Like, this is the first time, and I shared this with our staff yesterday, the first time in my educational career that I feel like I can't relate directly to what students are going through. So, my upbringing, when it comes down to things, some things students experience and students go through, it's easy for me. I'm like, I've been there, I've done that. Like, I'm not going to let that be an excuse or a barrier for you to be successful. I'm not going to let this pandemic or anything else that's going on, I'm also not going to let that be a barrier. But for the first time in my life and in this generation, our guys and girls who are coming up right now, our young people and folks our age and older, are going through unprecedented times. Like, not only a pandemic, but you also have another epidemic that's been going on, for and throughout our history when it comes to racial injustice and, inequities in our society. So both of those things are coming to a head right now. And I can't imagine, as a 39-year-old man, I know how I feel and how I struggle with it. I can't imagine what it's like to be an 11, 12, 13, or 14-year-old young man going through this right now.
Robert, I wonder, with your exceptional qualities and clearly your, expertise and knowledge working with your students, what have you gotten from this, though? How are you changed? How are you educated by this experience, emotionally, spiritually?
Yeah, so I know what my purpose is in life, right? So I'm hopeful that everyone who walks this earth gets to experience what I get to experience every single day. I think that everybody was put on this earth to do something. And without a doubt, I stopped caring about a position a long time ago. But this is my passion. And I know wholeheartedly it's my purpose. The work that we do, the service that we provide is incredibly difficult. It's very tiring. But I believe in a higher power. I believe that everything that I am meant and destined to do, I am doing. And anytime I get tired, or anytime I want to falter, or anytime I want to lay down, I'm just reminded that I was meant to do this work. I'm fulfilled, Sister Beam. So that's what I get out of it. And that's a beautiful feeling.
Well, Brother Robert Gunn, thank you for your time today. I feel better for having gotten to exchange with you for a while. You're a very powerful, spiritual, moving human being. And I'm just so grateful to know you a little bit and to be witness to what you're doing and how you're touching so many lives. So thank you for sharing your time with me.
Yes, ma'am. And I appreciate you. Love you like a sister. You welcomed me, as you alluded to earlier, in your home. Got a chance to meet your mother, your sisters, and immediately realized that you all are a lot like me, big huggers. So we'll never forget you opening your home to me, you visiting our school, and just, being a person that is truly about serving others and wanting change. So I follow you from a close and from afar. So I admire you. And thank you for taking the time to be with me a little bit today. I know you have some things going on, just love you dearly, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Robert. Love you too. And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon and giving you a hug.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That'll happen.
All right.
Guaranteed. Okay, take care.
Thank you, Robert.
All right.